All right. So, hi, I'm Joel Shinnis. Yes, that Joel Shinnis on YouTube, and this is this week I learned extended. So this is basically an example of implementing throttle and debounce. I'll leave a link to the original video that this is extending on. Oh look, there's that link. How clever is that? So you may not be familiar with a few things I'm using. You know, I'm using TypeScript, although I'm not really using anything TypeScripty. I'm using React, that might not be your thing, and I'm using hooks, you might not be used to that. I hope that you can kind of look at this as a chance to say, this is a foreign environment, I'm going to see what I can use, see it makes sense. In this case, this is state, which in a React world is basically, it's a kind of a variable that when it changes, it causes everything else to update as a result. So here, I have my state variable. Here, whenever the text input changes, I update that text variable, that state variable, based on e.target.value. And then here I read that. So what happens is that, sorry, that's the old version. When it happens is that when I write this, it shows up. Okay? I do a thing here, the state changes. So now I want to be able to throttle and debounce that state. Let's start with throttling. So what I'm going to do here is add a throttle. Okay, so now it's still using state. I got to make a hook of my own. I can make my own hook to kind of handle this. So here I go. Okay, it currently doesn't do anything different than state did, but we're about to change that. Okay, with throttle, the idea is that I'm going to take the initial value, and then I'm going to wait before taking a value again. Okay, so let me do a little more setup. Okay, so we're almost ready to actually make the logic happen. So when somebody clicks this, having not clicked this before, I want to indeed set the state. And then I also want to set a timer. And from the time that timer starts to when it ends, you can't set state again. So I'm going to make a ref. A ref is like, it's a little bit like state, except that when you update it, it doesn't trigger any other updates. So just kind of a variable that I can hold on to through different iterations of this thing. So timeout ref equals use ref. And right now its current is set to undefined. So I'm going to say that if the timeout ref.current is undefined, then indeed I want to set the state. I also want to set it to something. I want to create a timer that sets it. So timeout ref.current is going to be equal to set timeout. And I need a duration, so I'm going to pass that in here, but give it a initial value of 1,000 milliseconds. And what happens is that when this timeout is done, it's going to clear out the timeout ref.current, setting it to nothing. This error here, it's a weird little TypeScript error, but we can just ignore that for the time being. Usually I fix these sorts of things. Okay, so now that that is set up, so again, the first time it sets it, set state, new state, and then it starts this timer, and all the timer does is, when it's done, cleans itself up. Let's take a look. So now, when I set A, immediately state is set, and so is throttled. But if I say A, you'll notice it kind of takes a while to get new input. So it's taking them, but still slowing them down. Now, you'll also notice that right now, this is not the same as this. They're not really synced up together. So what I want to do is, I don't want to change it, but I want to capture whatever the last thing was. This is a trailing option that I can add. So let's say the trailing is true. So this doesn't have to be a thing that we add every time. But I'm going to keep track of what the last value was in another ref. And I'm going to say that when you set the new state, whatever last value is that new state. And then here, if trailing is set to true, we're going to set that last value to current, or sorry, we're going to set the state to whatever the last value dot current was. So now you can see that in a given enough time, the throttled is going to be keeping up with the original state. So that's a nice way to do that. All right, let's do debounced. I'm going to set it up much the same. Okay, now debounced and state are going to act the same. So let's change that. Let's create the use debounced hook. Still no difference yet, but we're going to make that happen. Okay, so in the use debounced, again, a little more boilerplate. Okay, now this is where the logic is going to happen as well. Same thing, same way it kind of did with the set throttled. Now with the debounced, every time I get something in, I want to wait the correct amount of time before setting that state. So what I'm just going to do is say set timeout and set again T here, T for time. All right, so let's take a look at what happens here. Now, when I set A, it takes a while for that to catch up. This isn't really debounced yet, it's just delayed, because if I write, you'll see that this has the exact same timing, the exact same number of inputs per second. It just takes a little bit longer. So let's fix that. Basically what has to happen is that every time I get in a new state, I have to cancel the old timeout. So I'm going to make another ref, const timeout ref equals use ref. And I'm going to say here, the first thing I'm going to do is clear timeout. Timeout ref.current. And I'm going to set the current one to be and again, same little TS ignore. But yeah, it's the same thing. So now every time I start, I clear out the time I was waiting before and set that timeout to happen again. Simple as that. So now the debounce kind of waits until I've had my fun. And you'll see that given enough time, it keeps up to date with what the current input is once the current input has paused. So that's part of the strategy. And by the way, just for anyone who's watching who may be like, but you didn't clean up the timeout. One of the things about when you're creating a hook and you're using timeouts, you always want to clean it up when you're done. So this is just me doing some, if you don't know much about Reacts or hooks or don't care, this part doesn't matter, but I always want to clean up after myself. So this is just me being a good citizen. All right, and that's my example. Thank you so much for your time and attention. I really hope this helps. Best of luck out there. Bye.